Welcome to Baseball Biz On Deck. I am Mark Corbin, and with me today, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain. How you doing, Matt?
I'm going to be doing better than Tampa, I guess, when it comes to weather for a little bit. But I guess we'll get the remnants once it makes its way north. So that's about where I stand.
Oh, brother, at the moment, some people are taking this too easy. They're saying, well, maybe we'll just see tomorrow whether we'll go ahead and go into work. We'll see how it goes and what actually happens. And I'm thinking, yeah, you look out the door right now and you're not seeing any heavy rains or anything, but when those winds come, it gets bad. And you've got people who live as much as an hour away from work in this area sometimes, and it's just going to be hard for them. So, uh, I don't know. I mean, I said to you before we got started today, my son and his wife, both of them up in Tallahassee, and I'm glad they're leaving the area. They're evacuating. I mean, there's already evacuation zones and notices saying, "Hey guys, you need to move now." So we wish everybody the best. We know that nothing ever goes easy when one of these hurricanes come through, and Helene doesn't seem like she's going to be a pleasant one. So best wishes to everybody out there, and see what happens, my friend.
Yep, that's you know what? Like now you're at the point now where you kind of have to roll with it and just help your neighbors out and look out for one another.
Yeah, yeah. Well, folks, here we are. Matt, you know, you see there during spring training, you think, well, okay, we'll get through this. And then we've got 162 games ahead of us, 162 games. And then we get to where we are now. What is it, 4 or 5 left now? We're recording this.
Yeah, I think it's 5 left, 5 games back.
Yeah. Yeah. So my brother was asking me today, he said, what do you think there's still some? I said, no. I said, if everybody else lays down and dies and puts a walking carpet out there for us, red carpet, yeah, I something could happen, but I don't really anticipate that being the case.
No, and there's a lot of irony to go along with it. I mean, when you consider, the spending that the Rays have done year by year, and you go through like in 2019, the Rays won 96 games, right?
Yeah.
And they spent and what was it, 60 million? And then in 2020, they spent the equivalent of, probably around the same, but they really ended up being 28, and they ended up with their best winning percentage, basically. And then in 2021, they won 100 games and they spent 66 million. And you go on, 22, 23, same thing. They ended up, not spending much, just over 70 and just over 80. And they ended up winning 86 and 99. And then this year they go out with a bang. They exceed 100 million for the first time. And lo and behold, they don't make the playoffs. You know?
Right.
So I think they've proven what they have proven for a long time. Money is not the issue.
No, I mean, Eric Neander has done such a great job with whatever purse of money that he has, that little over the years, and he's proven things can be done like that. So this year, yeah, it's kind of a stick in the craw a little bit when you think, yes, they actually did spend some money, but my gosh, we start this season without what's all of our major starting pitchers. They're just not there. Everybody's injured. Shane McClanahan's out. He's still out.
Mhm.
Where do we go? I mean, it was a rough year. We're bobbling still at 500, right at it. We're actually a little below today, but it's been an entertaining year.
It's just, there's a couple of things this year has lacked. And I think like every year that you go through, normally there's a winning streak at some point. There's like a stretch of time where you're like, we're unbeatable. We're kings of the hill. And I don't think we had that this year. There was stretches where you're winning a lot of series in a row, but you weren't really getting that, 9 to 12 game winning streak. And I think that kind of shows the way that the offense was rolling basically over through the year. And I think like when you look back on it completely, yes, the pitching, having the best starting pitchers available would have definitely helped. But I still go back to the whole missing all the left-handed bats that you were supposed to have, and then being forced to use the right-handed bats as a crutch, and then Randy Arozarena not showing up at all for 3 months of the season. So when you combine those two things together, it really left the Rays with a hole to dig themselves out of. They never really could.
It was tough. I'm trying to look for something that I can enjoy with every game
Mhm.
and even week to week. And the last couple of weeks, one of the shining stars for me has been Jonathan Aranda, seeing him perform as well as he has.
Yep. And I was told by a lot of people that he wasn't even supposed to be a major league player. And they didn't want him back. They thought he was a waste of time. They should give the playing time to somebody else. And I still believe that his hitting abilities are strong enough to be a really good contributor to a lineup for sure.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of future he has with us. I hope it's a good and a long one. So
Mhm.
Trisha Whitaker, she had, and forgive me, I could not identify the gentleman that was with Jose Siri, but she was saying something to the effect in a post on Instagram. I hope we can keep this guy. And I said, yeah, the energy and excitement that Siri has brought to the team. There's sometimes this year, there's been some consternation about it, about what's happening at the bat and what's not. But man, he is an entertainer. To watch that man in the outfield, what he can do is just been stunning. I was worried once Kiermaier left
Yep.
if we'd have any entertainment out in center field, but Jose Siri certainly filled that bill this year.
Yeah, well, there's no rush to move him. I mean, he first of all, he's not making a huge salary. The Rays are definitely happy in general with the defensive abilities he has and the speed that he has. It's just the frustrations at the plate of being really hot and being really cold. But he shows up enough during, I guess when you look at a lineup, you want guys to be able to steal some games through the season, and he's definitely done that when, normally it's after a benching.
Oh yeah.
But it's still kind of entertaining, and it's still good enough that even if the Rays wanted to split the time more often in the outfield, like he's only going to be RB1 this year, so he'll be making around $1 million. Like you're keeping that around with what he's providing. So I think that the pressure for him is going to come when the guys that are in AA right now make the move to AAA and prove themselves in AAA. At that point, there'll be pressure behind them, and it's going to be consistent pressure because there's guys behind those guys that are going to be continuing to pressure and provide the same kind of defensive abilities, but could potentially have more regularly competitive at bats throughout the season, I guess the best way to put it.
Well, you can tell they're hungry. I mean, look at was it are the Hot Rods, Bowling Green Hot Rods? Are they the only one who's won a championship this year?
Yeah, sadly, I thought the Biscuits were going to do it, but they ended up running into some really tough pitching, and they just couldn't get the lineup going against the guys that they faced. So they sort of fizzled. Chandler Simpson, I think, had 3 hits in the last game, then before they got booted out. And Tanner Murray had a heck of a series and a heck of a playoffs this year. But they just didn't have it. So the Bowling Green Hot Rods have the only championship and this year for the Rays affiliates, but to have 3 affiliates make it into the playoffs and have success is really good. I think the Rays, amped up their system enough that you can anticipate next year will be even better.
I'm looking forward to them. I mean, we've talked in the past so much about Chandler Simpson. I don't know
Mhm.
what his stolen base count is. It's obviously a lot more than Otani's. oh, we'll see. I said, what actually? What is he at now? I said,
He was at 103, and the lineup that they posted for the opener of their series, it had 290 stolen bases in it
"Jeez, Pete,
in
it's
the
amazing."
one lineup.
Jeez, and crackers, man. No, it's amazing watching these guys. I mean, I think next year I'll probably invest in the MLB TV. I get to catch some of it now and then, but not nearly enough. And to me, you and I have talked about this in the past. I think minor leagues can be just as exciting, if more than exciting, than the majors sometimes. Uh,
Absolutely.
I want to give a thank you to Mike Burlingame, who's with the Durham Bulls. They're hosting All American Women's Baseball Classic this year. And there's going to be 4 teams with the names of the original. Let's see, who's the Kenosha Comets, the Fort Wayne Daisies, I believe, Rockford Peaches, and did I say Blue Sox? Robot.
You
No,
have that?
seriously, a great group of teams are being assembled. I know the rosters have not been finalized, but I got a peek at what some preliminary stuff, and a lot of the women who were up there and won the silver at Thunder Bay are going to be in Durham for that tournament, and that's going to be going on from October 11th through the 14th. And I think they're even going to have some sort of clinic for young women up there for baseball as well. So get on out there if you get a chance, folks.
I know they definitely put on a good show, and I've enjoyed all the games that I've been able to watch over time. So it's definitely nice to get into any baseball game at any level, but especially when you're supporting one that they're trying to get their feet under them and get things moving. And it's a great cause to support for sure.
Right. And I don't know. I think I've heard there's going to be a couple of Canadian players there as well. I'm not sure which ones, but I know Canada brought home the bronze this year. The U.S. got the silver and Japan had the gold. But there was one player, and I don't have her name at my fingertips at the moment, but I'll dig it out later. And she had won like 4 of the awards. Santa Catterall, that's her name. All right. Just for fun, if we're not going to be in this postseason, it does look. I mean, let's talk about who's going to be in there. Who's clinched at this point? We've got the Guardians have clinched.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee's clinched.
Yep.
Let's see who else we got, brother.
The Yankees,
Yeah.
Astros, Orioles are pretty much shoo-ins. And then you have, I think after tonight, depending on how things go, it's possible that Detroit and or Kansas also lock it up.
Right.
So it's pretty close in the American League to being, solidified. In the National League, it's a little bit blurrier because the Braves are only a half game back of the D-backs, and they're 1 game back of the Mets. So there's a little bit of give there, but essentially you have one of the Mets, or sorry, yeah, one of the Mets, D-backs, or Braves being left out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ones that are in are the Padres, Brewers, Phillies, and Dodgers.
Wow. I mean, yeah, the Mets are the only thing you said with about a half game out. So we will see. I'm looking at a little more
So is
because
there a Cinderella story in there at all? Like
I,
you know,
I say, yeah, that's they're out there a half game in. Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I was kind of hoping to see the Cubs move up. I
hmm.
always want to see the Braves, in there and just love that
would
team.
would the Tigers be considered a Cinderella story?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just done pretty well with them this year, but
Yeah.
I think they would still be considered Cinderella at this point. Yeah, they 83 and 74 at the moment.
Right. And I'm saying like if they make it to the World Series,
Oh
it
yeah.
would be a Cinderella story at that point, right? Because I think some people had them maybe making the playoffs if things lined up right. But I don't think anybody picked them to get anywhere near, past the first round sort of thing. So I think them and if the Mets do stay in and make a deep run, considering the injuries that they've faced, like just in
Yeah.
their pitching alone, to me, they almost become a Cinderella story, even though they have spent money. They didn't get to use the money that they spent, if that makes any sense. Or they use some, but not all of it or near all of it. So it's a weird playoff. I think the Brewers are the one team that I could choose as a favorite. Like maybe I'll cheer that for them over others just because they're the NL Rays. Um, but other than that, I think I'll probably boo the majority of the remainder.
I'm with you,
That's
brother.
okay. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I mean, we've had Nate on here from the Full Count Chaos,
Mhm.
and I kind of pull for them, you know. But you look at former Rays who are still out there, and you mentioned Milwaukee. Let's see, you got Jakey Byers, you got Aaron Savali, you got Willie Adames,
Mhm.
and so is there anybody else on the Milwaukee's team that I'm forgetting that came?
Well, Matt Arnold, who's heading the whole show, is,
Right.
he's a front office guy, but I think that still sort of counts. They also have, the I know I tend to look at guys even when they're in the minors. So Tobias Myers is the guy that was traded for Junior Caminero, and
Mm,
and and he was with the Rays for I think 2 or 3 seasons in the minors. Same thing with Hobie Milner. He was with the Rays for a bit in the system. So I've seen them just because I watch a lot of the games in the minors, but I know a lot of people might not. And they also have a Canadian kid, which I'm hoping gets some playing time in the playoffs. I'm not sure he will though, Tyler Black. Um, but I think he'll probably remain down unless there's an injury. But yeah, they also have some electric talents that you kind of want. You're intrigued. You remember how Randy Rosarena, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but stole the show in his first playoff, right? And then some guys are just built for that spotlight. So when you have talents like Jackson Churio, heading into the playoffs, you're kind of wondering, what is he going to pull off under the spotlight? Same thing with William Contreras. He's always a good guy to watch, and I really like their team. I think they're kind of they're always understated preseason. People don't believe in them. This year it was all about the pitcher that they traded away. They traded away their ace. They weren't going to make the playoffs. I kept telling people they're going to win the division, and sure enough, they won the division. Just because of the way they run their organization and they build a team with a team concept. And I think that's where they resemble the Rays quite a bit, is in trying to pick out good people, having solid baseball footing. And I think one of their strengths is a little bit like the Cards, which is odd because they're in the same division, where they always seem to have strong catchers. And it helps their pitching staff a lot. So when you look at Corbin Burns leaving,
hmm
I think a lot of his success was because of the talent they had behind the plate.
Well, there's nothing like a good, strong battery. And I go back time and time again, you know, where I look at Travis d'Arnaud and Charlie Morton. And I felt like they were just so in sync with one another when I'd watch them play with the Rays. They seem to still have it with the Braves. But when you think of a catcher making a difference, he's definitely one for that. And I'm not going to pick on anybody from the Rays, but if you're thinking Renee Pinto, I didn't think I'd see him come back, and he didn't. Do you think we'll see Zobrist back? Do you?
Zobrist? Oh, and
I
then
said Zobrist. I meant
That's-
God. I'm off a decade or so, brother. No.
you meant
How,
Ben Rortveld or
Rortvet. Yeah,
yeah.
Rortvet. Do you think
I
I'm going to edit that out? I tell you.
That's okay. Can you get me paused? I was like, wait a
Oh,
minute, was there a coaching thing that I
jeez.
didn't get? Or
Yeah. We brought Ben Zobrist back. I wish he would. He'd
so
be
ask me
cool.
the question the way you wanted to ask it,
No, just
and then you can put it in.
all right. Catching 2025. Do you think we will see somebody different there? Do you think we'll make any changes there?
So I think the success that they had, although very short with Logan Driscoll, has opened up their eyes to his potential. And I also think it opened up their eyes to not being afraid of going young. And I say young relatively because a lot of the guys they have, quote unquote, ready for the show are actually like 25, 26, 27. They're not young, but they're young for a catcher to get
Right.
a significant amount of time. So I think there are guys out there like Danny Jansen is an example of a guy that they could bring in that would have an immediate impact both in the lineup, in leadership, but he has a lot of health issues. Would they be afraid of that? Probably not. This is an organization that brought Wilson Ramos in with a lot of leg and knee issues.
Yeah.
They didn't care. Travis d'Arnaud had like an injury file that if you put it on the floor was stacked to the ceiling.
Oh,
Uh, there's a lot of guys that they've brought in over the years. Even Mike Zunino, he had a pretty strong record overall in terms of games played. But they haven't been afraid to push the envelope if they see a guy that might have an impact. In Mike Zunino's case, it was his bat and the power that it provided. So Danny Jansen would be the same kind of addition, and I think they could afford it next year. So that's one guy that I could see them target. And he knows the division, he knows the talents and the Blue Jays. It could help out in a lot of ways. And I think, if they want to give a 50-50 playing time situation, and then give him some DH time, like that works too. But if they go with fully internal, I could see that as well. Just because they have a lot of guys that are, impact-ish bats. You can never really project a catcher and how he'll hit at the major league level.
yeah.
Sometimes they could just plummet right off the earth. I think Alex Jackson is a good example. Tore up AAA, looked like he couldn't be stopped. As soon as he gets to the show, it evaporates for some unknown reason. So you can't really predict it, but I will tell you that Kenny Piper is one guy to keep an eye on, just because his power is real. He drives the ball to the gaps extremely well. He catches a really solid game. He's basically sound at all areas of the game, and he gets a lot of key hits and clutch situations. So I would not be surprised to see them give him a look at some point. I just don't know if they would bank on him from the beginning of the season. That would be, a tall ask.
Right.
So I think it would be more of the situation where if they did bring in a veteran or somebody like Jansen, and he got hurt sometime in June, then they could call Piper up or somebody like that. So they have other guys too. Like we've been talking a lot about Dominic Keegan over the years, and he's already spent the winter in the or a fall in the AFL, and this offseason, now that he has a full AA season under his belt and he's still strong at the plate, still looks like a good catching prospect. Assuming he starts strong in AAA, does he become an option? And how much do they want to block him if he does, take off in that role? I think the Rays, if you're looking from a historical point of view, would want him to have a full season in AAA under his belt,
Yeah.
and then maybe look at 2026. But that probably means they have to add him to the roster, because I can't. I want to say he has another year, but I don't know if he does. They might actually have to add him to the roster this year to protect him from the Rule 5. No, I think it might be 2025. I think he's on that list. So they do have another year. They can use him in AAA, give him that extra seasoning, and then they only have to protect him. So, yeah, everybody that is a strong Rays fan and has watched this team over the years recognizes that the catcher situation is one of them that, sucks the life out of the lineup a lot of times. And they need to resolve that in some way, shape, or form. But in an organization that has a guy like Kevin Cash, who, let's face it, was not a good hitter,
Yeah.
the value is all going to one place, and that's in the defensive abilities, and they don't care about the rest. Like they really, 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 really do not care about the rest, and it shows. So you end up with a certain product. Now, I will say that nobody saw, the value that Ben Rortveld brought to the Rays before the season started. They never saw the Rays going after that, and they did it very last minute, right before the season started, with a divisional rival of all places.
Right.
So they probably have their eyes on certain guys, and I could name off a dozen of them that would make a lot of sense. But the truth is that the Rays are just at a point now where they might want to look or to revamp the way that they look at the catching position. And especially with getting closer and closer and closer to an electronic strike zone, how much weight do they want to put on that framing? How much weight do they want to put on certain aspects of the catching position where they might be able to get away with a bit less value there and a bit more bat?
That's an interesting thought about how the electronics going to be impacting the necessity of being excellent framing from a catcher, because that whole little mystery of deception that the catcher tries to conjure in front of the umpire about where the ball is going, that is something to watch. To me, that's part of the skill of being a catcher. But if everything else, if you know what we need, Matt, we need to go ahead and make the catching position a second DH position.
It's gonna get there. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
do have to be able to catch the ball, but most people can. It's 100 miles an hour, so you do have to have good reflexes. Uh, and I'm sure any catcher that has to cover balls that are in the dirt about 3 or 5 feet in front of the plate will tell you it's not an easy job. But when they took away the collisions at the plate, when they took away certain aspects of the game, and now they've made running so easy that really throwing doesn't really matter anymore because the runner's going to take the base the majority of the time anyway. So, they keep diminishing the value of the catching position over time. You've got the pitch calm, you've got so you're at a point now where you're like, you know what? Like I could probably convert most shortstops to catcher and be fine with it. Like it's to that point now. And the Rays have done that in the past. They put Ford Proctor behind the plate and he ended up catching for the Giants for a bit. So, the catching position is going to become a utility player's position eventually. It's coming. And I could see it happening. And it's gonna mean a whole lot more utility players have to know how to call a game. And there's certain aspects of the game that they may not be paying as much attention to as they were before. But if, like for Proctor, it gets you a position in the bigs because you're able to cover second, shortstop, third, and the catcher position, well, then guys are going to do it. They're just going to take that on as a role.
Well, as long as we're talking about DH, think about the DH across all of baseball this year, Mr. Shohei Ohtani.
Hmm?
And
Never heard of
D
them.
that's right. There you go. I mean, a lot of players who've been designated hitters have won like the MVP in the World Series, but I don't know if there's ever been a designated hitter who's won the league MVP. Let's see. I mean, I know Ortiz and them won it for the World Series. You're the MVP of the World Series, but I don't know if there's ever been a DH who's won the MVP. But I
Well,
mean,
you have to like go back to how do I put this? How long has the DH position been used, or I shouldn't say position, DH role? Uh,
mhm.
and how much of an impact do you really get to make in the course of a game? I think if other than Ortiz, Edgar Martinez is the one guy that comes to mind, and I think he might have been the top three MVP vote at some point. I remember like he had a good 4 year stretch where he was just tearing the ball out of the park, and it's at a time when I guess you could say the steroids were starting to become an issue in baseball, but I never heard any whispers about him being part of that. He was more of a batting average and on base percentage king. There's a season where he had an OPS over 1100, so uh, that was an elite bat, right? But even that season, like you're talking about, maybe he flirted with 30 home runs and he had 100 RBIs plus, but nobody in the history of the game has stolen 50 bases and hit 50 home runs. And
No.
that's just, I don't care what role you're playing and how many at bats you get. If you manage that in a season, you're the MVP. It
There
doesn't
you go.
matter. The rest of it is irrelevant. Yes, he's hitting over 300. Yes, he's got an on base of whatever. Who cares? He stole 50 bases and he hit 50 home runs. I mean, if like me, you have a big history of fantasy baseball. I mean, you start drooling at players when they're at 25, 25. You're like, oh, I really want that guy on my team because it balances and gives you an edge. And you get to 30, 30, you're like, whoa, like, all right, I'm doing really well. I've got a guy that I want to sign long term. I want to keep him around, unless you get a Grady Sizemore type. But anyways, that's the point. And then you get the 40-40, and I think we've only had what, two or three? I think Alfonso Soriano, Mike Trout. I mean, you're getting into the rarest of platforms. But to 50-50, it's just mind-boggling. I know I've talked about the house of cards that the Dodgers have built, and I still stand by that. I still think that they're they're building a team that isn't going to be sustainable. I don't think they care, but they just they're building it in a way that I wouldn't do personally. But Ohtani is just rewriting what a baseball player can be. He's putting himself at another level. Uh, I hate to say it, but I mean Babe Ruth couldn't compare to that kind of profile. The pitching, the running, and the hitting all combined, it's just otherworldly. And it's making him look like a machine at this point.
Well, I think you're there, my friend. Whether or not there's any defense that a player does, you cannot achieve what he's done. And I don't know enough about all that as far as like the WAR wins above replacement, but whatever measurement they want to use, maybe you need to, if it doesn't fit, guess what? This guy has blown all that out of the water anyway. And yeah, if they don't make him MVP this year, shame on them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Like that's just, it would almost have to be called racist at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's just insanity. Having said that, there are other players that are having outstanding seasons that should be highlighted, and I think it does speak to the fact that baseball is in a great place. There's people that'll make a case for Aaron Judge, who's hit over 50 home runs as well, and he's got a higher WAR because he plays a position. And Bobby Witt Jr. is the other one. So
Hmm.
Gunnar Henderson's having a great year as well. I don't want to diminish that. And he's at like the 30-20 club. And Bobby Witt's at the 30-30 club. But it just goes to show, like if I tell you, okay, Bobby Witt hits 32 home runs, 31 stolen bases, and he's got a WRC plus of 170, right? At his age, that's just insanity. Uh,
Hmm.
and his on base percentage is 392, right? But then I tell you, Shohei Ohtani hit 21 home runs more than Bobby Witt, hit and then stole 24 more bases. You know, you're starting to go, what? So one of the best players in the league hits 30-30 over that, and somebody outdoes him by 2020. Like that's just, I don't know. I still can't wrap my head around it.
Well, all I have to say about that is this, that the phrase GOAT and phenomenon and whatever, those pale beyond what that man has done with the game. We're going to have to find another word completely to try to put him into his own unique classification. And he
He's
is
gonna have to have a trophy by the time his career is done. Like when he goes into the Hall of Fame, they're gonna have the Ohtani, and it's going to be a combination of power, speed, and pitching. I would imagine, assuming he gets back to pitching. I don't think you can have the pitching in there if he doesn't get back to it. But if he gets back to on the mound as a starter, even as a closer, then you would have to make that trophy come to life.
right. Well, I can see that. I am curious as well as he's done just at the, at bat. Do you put him back on the mound because it limits the amount of time that he's going to be at the plate? I don't know.
It's him. It's what he wants.
Well, there
If
you go.
if you start putting the stick in the spokes, and I'm pretty sure it's probably laid out in his contract anyway, what he can and can't do. Because when you get to this kind of level of payment, you kind of want to make sure you know what you're getting. But there's no doubt in my mind he wants to get back in the mound. I just don't know what role he's going to test his arm out because he does know like the next surgery could be, a significant one for all of his game.
Yeah, again, I think we all owe Otani a debt of gratitude for bringing a new level to the game, a new excitement. And I hope that sprays out wide as far as people's engagement to baseball because baseball isn't as quite as popular as it once was. I mean, we're seeing football or soccer, whatever you want to call it these days, has continued to rise. But people like Otani can really kind of bring it all back.
Yep, he's definitely well. So if you speak about baseball worldwide, any country, I believe they will know Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact they won't know Mike Trout. And I know for a fact they might know Aaron Judge because of the Yankees and the lure. So like you could make a good case that there's maybe a handful of baseball players that would be recognized, worldwide, and he's definitely at the top of those.
Well, I'm kind of depart from that. I just want to thank all of the minor leaguers in the Rays system. They have done just such a great job. And again, fantastic to see that the hot rods go ahead and take the SAL championship. See the guys coming up from the Charleston River Dogs and of course the Montgomery Biscuits and the Durham Bulls. So it's been an exciting year watching things change, seeing players come up. So, and I've always said it too that being able to see a AAA team, it's great because you see some of the ones at the majors as well. Aranda's been up and down, and some other ones with the Bulls. It makes it difficult sometimes for a AAA team to do as well as they like when the major league team seems to be pulling and dropping and pulling and dropping uh, players up and down. But they everybody's had a pretty good year, I think, overall.
I think one of the things that I love most about the minors, and this is why I used to pay attention to it just because of fantasy purposes, and I wanted to know, get an edge and know the guys a little bit more and put my own eyes on them instead of just going by what's on paper. Um, but I think one of the things that I appreciate most about watching minor league baseball is, first of all, you get to see how raw they are when they first start. You get to see the whole progress. So I've gotten to watch Junior Caminero, for example, play, in low A, play in Australia, play in at the high A level, at the double A, and see how he's progressed and how he's looked at each level and how just naturally gifted he is in comparison to other players. And you get to see the hard work they put in, where they improve. So Jonathan Aranda is a good example, like you keep mentioning. Like I used to watch him in the Mexican League and when he was playing in Winter League ball. And you get to see how much work he's put in to become average defender and the progress that it took to get there. And even as a hitter, like he used to be a lot worse, and he never was a contact player hitter at the beginning, and he had to work on it to get there. So then you appreciate what he's done and how much better he is when you see him in AAA and he's knocking the ball around and driving pitchers nuts by, putting in the at bats that he does. So I think the minor leagues is where you get to grow your love of the players. When I saw Mike Brasso come up with the Rays, I was elated. Watched him just tear up the ABL and be all, looking like a stud for the first time in his minors career, and then all of a sudden he goes up and he continues and builds on that in the upper levels of the Rays system. So when he got to the Rays, I was so happy for him. Like it was insane. So I think it's where if Major League Baseball could do anything to grow the game, it would be to build the love of the younger players through both the college and the minor league routes and make them all one package so that they actually become known before they ever make it to the bigs.
Mm.
In the same way that the NFL and the NHL do, where you get to know the players at the lower levels on a national basis before they ever even make it to the majors. Then the guys care about what they're watching.
I think it's pardon me. I think that's yet another good way to nurture the game with the audience too, Matt. So we'll put that bug in your ear, MLB. So let's see what comes back from it because I like that. And the Australian Baseball League will be starting here soon before we know it, won't it?
Yes, it will, and they should be announcing the guys going over pretty soon. Usually, maybe by the first week of October, we get to know who it is because they have to get on the plane, and head out there. They're probably going through the workouts by the time it's announced, to be honest. The season usually starts and they start playing the Rays players in late October and early November. So the guys that head over to recently, it's been more of the Latin American players. I don't know why, because a lot of them usually play in the Dominican, and it seems to make a little bit more sense to send a variety of players. But for some reason, they haven't sent anybody that's like a newly drafted player, like they used to do a lot of times,
Hmm.
or somebody that was injured for the majority of the year needs the extra playing time. I don't know why, but either they've said no and they didn't want to go, or they decided to just go this route because of the extra development that they can hand guys that now are missing the Appalachian League. So either way, the guys always seem to do really well, and last year's contingent was a little bit weak, to be honest, in terms of the talent ceilings. And I think two of the spots ended up going to Reds players because they have a maximum number of foreign players they can bring in. Uh,
Ah,
so, it'll be interesting to see if this time around they can get a full contingent down and who it is. But more than likely it'll be young guys that you and I, haven't seen play very much so far.
well, I'm going to forward to that as well. I'm going to see about maybe getting some of the people who run the league on the show, and we can talk to them a little bit more about what they hope to achieve.
Mhm.
As far as 2025 and the Rays, I mean, I don't know. We still got some games to play, and I'm not trying to disregard that. But the one thing, if I could give a gift to the Rays for next season, that gift would be the ability to have a healthy rotation of six pitchers.
Yeah,
To me, that could be the best thing that that team could have, and that those players could have. And I hope that we will see more nurturing and of that rotation. I know you brought it up before, and I thought it was a good idea then. And I think maybe even more so now. And I'm starting to hear other people repeat that, saying, "Hey, a six-man rotation. Maybe they'll keep them healthy." I don't know, but I think that would certainly benefit the Rays. So that's
absolutely. And I also think that they need a leader in on a team. And then the more that I think of it, and the more that I think of the way, the next 5 years are gonna go. Let's say you look at all the young guys that are coming up and the pressure they're going to be under to perform. And you're seeing it right now in Baltimore, where they've have this kind of really, really, really talented group, but they're still getting their legs under them and getting that kind of they're trying to get that moxie that says we belong and we're here for good and we're going to do it for year after year after year. It's a tough place to get to. And so when I look at the off season, the budget the Rays have, how they're so low down in the budget that I think they could go out there and blow the doors off of it and just sign Pete Alonso. What that would do to this franchise is just insane. First of all, he's a local guy. Second of all, he's not going to demand to play first base every day. He knows that. Eventually, if he goes to DH only, he's not going to care. He's the polar bear. He's just this lovable attitude guy that is going to be a focal point of the roster that would take a lot of pressure off of everyone else. Um, I know that signing him away from the Mets is going to be nearly impossible. So I'm not saying it by any means that it's going to happen. I'm just saying that if they throw um, a bit more money than the Mets maybe are willing to give to a first baseman for whatever reason, because you never know what the way franchise roll and what they're thinking. That for a hometown team and how glad he seemed to be playing in Tampa, that's one, and even so, it's that type of player. It's the gelling. established presence in the lineup, power bat that they sort of need if they're going to take the next step forward with what I see. Because when I look at the Rays right now, I see that one of the strongest pitching groups going into 2025. They have one of the best systems in the bigs. So what adding Pete Alonso would do is say, okay, now we have that presence in the lineup. Yes, we're going to pay for it, but we have all this talent now that we can trade for other pieces if we want,
Yeah.
because we have that spot dealt with. We know what we're getting for the next 5, 6, 7 years, however long the contract is. I don't think they would go past 5, but you know, you could argue over it. But I think that that kind of signing would send a strong message to the fan base, a strong message. He would open up the new stadium as part of the team, which I think would be an alluring thing for him. And it would just sort of establish the Rays as a true contender for 2025.
Man, I love it. We're going to have to end on that because to me, that is a perfect cap to the show because Pete Alonso, oh, wow. If we could get him here, that would just be huge. Hometown boy, Plant High School, all that he did here, it was just amazing. He and his wife have got the foundation. And I know I saw where they gave a tractor to a small little league around here a while back to keep the field up. But that's nothing compared to also the energy that man brings to every game. And that you're talking about somebody who could be a leader. I would absolutely positively love to see Pete there. And we wouldn't necessarily fill every seat in the daggone Trop, but I guarantee you would definitely see an increase in people attending the game.
I agree. I think that's a big part.
All righty, Matt. Let's unless you got any other nuggets, I want to go ahead and close on that.
I have one last nugget. So
Please.
the AZL or the Arizona Fall League lineups were put out. And you have Trey Morgan that's going to be playing along with Xavier Isaac. Both of them are made the team, and they're going to be. They actually have Trey Morgan listed as an outfielder, so it's going to be interesting to see how he looks out there against some pretty good competition at that level.
Wow, there you heard it, folks. So we'll be checking that out as well as the Arizona League. Matt, I can't thank you enough, and I wish well to you and your folks, and also to all the folks that may be in the path of Helene today. So God bless you all, and stay safe.
Absolutely, stay safe.
Just remember, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matt, M-A-T, _ Germain, GERMAIN _ You can find me, Mark, at The Baseball Biz on Twitter. And you can also find me at BaseballBiz, www.baseballbizondeck.com, and anywhere you like on the directories, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So until next time, thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon. Special thanks to XAKRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.